Hello everyone, Steven here from Redolescence with another fragrance review. Thank you so much for tuning into my channel and watching my videos. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a fragrance from the designer house of Tom Ford, and this one is part of his private blend line, and it goes by the name of Champaca Absolute. Now this fragrance was released in 2009, and while I couldn't gather what the perfumer's name for this fragrance is, I do know that Tom Ford is indeed the creative director for this brand, and from what I'm given to understand, he's very active in the decision making that goes on at the brand in terms of marketing and distribution and stuff like that. So like I said, this is part of the private blend line, and Tom Ford has two types of lines for his fragrances. The first is the regular line, the standard line, which includes fragrances like Grey Vetiver, Sahara Noir, Noir for men, and these are fragrances that could be found at the lower end department stores like Macy's and Sephora, so on and so forth. And then there's the private blend line. These fragrances recently became available on LuckyScent.com, so I'm going to leave the link in the description section below, but they can also be found at high-end stores such as Neiman Marcus. Now as far as the private blends go, there are a lot that get a lot of play, and I'm thinking about fragrances like Tobacco Vanille, Tuscan Leather, Noir de Noir, Oud Wood, so on and so forth. And I think the private blend line is also notorious for discontinuing some gems. And I'm thinking of fragrances like Amber Absolute, Japon Noir, so on and so forth. Now this fragrance has been around since 2009, doesn't really get a lot of talk in the community. It is marketed as a unisex fragrance, and I'm going to let you know if I think this is worthy of a little bit more hype. But next up, let's take a look at the presentation for Champaca Absolute by Tom Ford. Champaca Absolute is available in a few different bottle sizes, including a 50 ml bottle, which is the one that you see here, and a 250 milliliter bottle. Now, other Tom Ford private blend fragrances are available in 100 milliliter bottles. I don't think that that's the case with Champaca Absolute. I think it's just those two sizes, but if you go to a Tom Ford counter in the mall, they will be more than happy to give you a 3 to 4 ml sample complimentary with your purchase. This fragrance is only available in eau de parfum concentration. First up, let's take a look at the box, and it pretty much looks like other Tom Ford private blend boxes, with the exception that you have a sticker here in the front that says Champaca Absolute, name of the company above that, some more information down at the bottom, and then your UPC code and lot number at the very bottom. The ingredients on the back, and this opens up to reveal this nice podium on which the fragrance rests. That's pretty much it, nothing going on inside the box or anything. And that has pretty much been the presentation of the box. Now as far as the bottle goes, it also looks like other Tom Ford private blend fragrances. This one is black. Other fragrances like Santal Blush is white. Neroli Portofino also has a variety that comes in a transparent blue bottle. This one is just black. Over here at the top you have the name of the company, Tom Ford, and then in the front you have this sticker that pretty much looks like the one found on the box. Down here at the bottom you have some more information consistent with the one found on the box, and the atomizer for this fragrance is not the best in the game, but you do get a pretty good distribution. I think pretty good for an eau de parfum concentration, and that has pretty much been the presentation for Champaca Absolute by Tom Ford. Now, what I get from this fragrance as far as the smell goes is it opens up with a little bit of citrus, I think it's bergamot, but a blast of florals. Now, the most concentrated note in this fragrance is the note of Champaca, after which this fragrance is named, and from what I'm given to understand, Champaca comes from the ylang-ylang family. And indeed, when this fragrance opens up, you do get this kind of white and yellow floral feeling from it. The best way that I can describe it is that Champaca, to me, kind of smells like lilies. So if you've ever smelled lily, the lily plant, or lily as a note in fragrances, that's kind of the feel that I get from this fragrance. Now, there's an abundance of florals in this fragrance. You not only have Champaca, you also have jasmine and orchid, and jasmine, as I've encountered it in fragrances, traditionally has a clean, almost transparent feel. There's nothing transparent about this fragrance. I think that the florals are very dominant in this composition. Now, I'm not going to lie, there is also a redeeming factor. As it starts to dry down, there are some sweet qualities that really come through. There's definitely the undeniable note of vanilla in this fragrance. There's a vanillic sweetness in the dry down. And then there's something that I initially thought was tonka bean, because it's kind of balmy and kind of nutty. And when I looked it up, there's a listed note of marron glacé. I believe that's how it's pronounced. And what that basically is candied chestnuts. So it does have somewhat of like a sweet nutty vibe, but there's also one other note that I think is worthy of a mention, and I don't know if I would necessarily consider it a note, more so of an accord, and that is the accord of Cognac. So it's the second most concentrated note according to user votes on online fragrance forums, and I think Cognac as a liquor is distinguishable by what grapes are used in the fermentation, how many times it's distilled, but also what barrels it's aged in. And I think Cognac is traditionally stored or aged in oak barrels. So when this fragrance opens up, I do get something that's kind of fruity about it, as weird as that sounds, and I do get a woody facet from it too. I don't know if it's necessarily oak, just because those florals, to me on my skin, they dominate this composition. So the bottom line for this fragrance is it's a fragrance that opens up very, very floral. As far as the sweetness goes, it never really dethrones the florals. They always dominate the composition. And as a male consumer, I would be a little bit wary in purchasing this fragrance, especially blind buying this fragrance. So if you take an interest in Tom Ford private blend fragrances and you're a guy, I would highly recommend you sample this before you buy. Definitely do not blind buy this fragrance. Now in terms of compliments or complaints, if you're a guy, I think you're more likely to get a complaint. I think people might be under the impression that you're wearing a women's perfume. This does come across smelling a little bit perfumey. If you're a woman, I think this is an amazing fragrance. I actually really enjoy the fragrance. I think it's a quality blend, and I think it's a very well put together fragrance. And lastly, have I worn this fragrance outside of testing? No, unfortunately. This is a fragrance that I reserve to wearing in the comfort of my own home. As a matter of fact, I'd be a little bit self-conscious wearing this fragrance in public. So thank you so much for watching. Last up, we have the rating. Take care. First up, we have uniqueness and overall smell, and I ended up giving this fragrance a 6 out of 10. I do think that this fragrance was a little bit too floral for my taste. It was a combination of the different floral notes, and even though there's a little bit of sweetness in the dry down, it never really gives the opportunity to shine because the florals always dominate. I do think that this caters a little bit more for the feminine crowd and female consumers, but I do like that cognac note idea that they were tossing around. I think that it's done more so for the purposes of marketing and advertisement, rather than it being an accurate representation of how the fragrance smells. But other than that, I ended up giving it a 6 out of 10. It's a quality blend and a nice fragrance. It just wasn't for me. Next up, we have longevity, and this fragrance actually did really well in this category. I ended up giving it a rating of an 8. This, on my skin on average, lasts about 8 hours. I have gotten less on some days, more on other days. But on average, it's in the vicinity of 8 hours, so I gave it an 8 out of 10. Next up, we have projection. And this fragrance, I don't think projects as well as it lasts, but I think that projection for this fragrance is still very good. I ended up giving it a 7 out of 10. This projects about an arm's length for about 2 to 3 hours, and then it starts to sit a little bit closer to the skin, but it takes a really long time for it to become a skin scent. I would say about 7 or 8 hours. This fragrance was noticeable, and I was still getting comments by family members and my girlfriend when I was wearing it, even well into the 7-hour mark. So I ended up giving it a 7 out of 10. Next up, we have Versatility, and this is where I got a little bit confused, just because it's a fragrance I think that caters a little bit more for women. Now, as far as social occasions, I think that there's something floral but very clean about this fragrance too, which makes it appropriate to be worn in casual scenarios as well as formal scenarios and everything in between. As far as seasons, I think it would work more so in the springtime, but something about this fragrance and its performance I think could be pulled off in the winter as well. Maybe not the dead of winter, more so in the fall and the warmer days of winter. So I ended up giving it an 8 out of 10. I just don't think that this is a very unisex fragrance, but I think in terms of performance and versatility, it's actually one of the better fragrances. And then last up, we have presentation. I already told you what I feel about that. I think it's a very classy, timeless bottle, and I do like how the gold accentuates the black. I ended up giving it an 8 out of 10 as well, and then that brings this fragrance to an overall rating or an average score of 7.4 out of 10. So there you have it, folks. That was my review of Champaca Absolute by Tom Ford. Please don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe. It would be greatly appreciated. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to let me know. Shoot a comment down below. I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Again, thank you so much for watching. This has been Steven with another fragrance review from Red Essence. Thanks again.